I hope you guys are ready to get jiggy with it.
Welcome to the second ever Nate the Bullet podcast. Twitter at Nate the Bullet, Facebook page like that, YouTube, it's all there at natethebullet.com. The email info at natethebullet.com, BULLITT. This Nate the Bullet podcast is sponsored by Blue Dream, Sativa, and Universal Collective. They don't know I'm saying this. I'm just telling you where I get the Blue Dream. This half hour is also brought to you by Cannabis Storytime. Little book I'll be reading to you every even show, so 2, 4, 6. Because I've got Fun Guy Storytime and 1, 3, 5, and so on. So, this one I found, I think, what was it? Yeah, it was in the mansion that I moved into when I was little after I found out who my real dad was. And it turned out he was rich and even had a train in the living room. I think it was 1982. Yeah. Anyway, I kind of left you hanging. Last show with the whole E.T. ego death stuff. I thought I was going to get a little farther into other stories where all those funny things have the same thing, have the same stuff in different ways, from Snow White and the dwarves. Then you've got the Munchkins and the Wizard of Oz. You've got the Oompa Loompas. The Oompa Loompa. Oh my. Should I just start over? Woo! I'm ripping it up on this one, aren't I? The Oompa Loompas in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The little people. The elves with Santa. What else? We got the dwarves. We got the Oompa Loompas. We got the Munchkins. We got... Well, everybody's sort of... There's all kinds of little things and weird things in Alice in Wonderland. That's a little different. Well, different but the same. Anyway, why do we have that? Why are the little people in there? It's because when you do, and I'm not condoning, I'm condoning the use of psychedelics. What I am condoning is the education of psychedelics and sharing your personal perspective on things. So if you're wrong about something, you can get it fixed, or you share and help someone else so they go, that's all I condone. But anyway, when you're on a heroic dose, Terrence McKenna, you tend to... I don't see them. I don't see little people. I sense them and kind of hear them. In the couple of times it's actually happened to me where I've had that, I more sense it, and they seem small. But that's the Smurfs and the mushrooms. And like also with that, the same thing with the dwarves, with the dwarves and all their different personalities, doesn't that kind of remind you of Inside Out? And that's what they are. They're all your little mechanisms, or your little pieces of you going, hey, you, blah, 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 blah. When in reality, they're all pecking at you. But when you're in that state, they're more like, see, it's all a joke. We're just goofing. We're just busting your balls. How else? Here's where they all sort of tie together when it comes to psychedelics, to me. In The Wizard of Oz, you've got the little storm and the house is spinning. In Alice in Wonderland, After she goes down the hole, she has to eat the mushroom to get big and small, which is actually about perspective, and everything's all weird and everything until she gets out there into Wonderland, and it's, oh, wow. But it's this really weird spot at first. And what's the other one I was going for? That's The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. After he first brings them in, before they get to the imagination song, before he opens the door and they sing he sings the imagination song, in that area, after they first enter the building, before they get to that other door, things are all kind of weird. Before, to me, that's that area of about 35 to 40 minutes in after you've consumed, say, mushrooms. I can't even remember when I did LSD. It was so long ago, I don't even remember how long it took. And plus, there was alcohol involved. And it was fun, but stupid. It would have been better without the alcohol. But anyway, with mushrooms, after you consume them, it takes about 35 to 40 minutes to start to feel them. Sometimes it can come on a little faster depending on how much or little food you've got in your belly. The less, the better, and that also helps with nausea, because some people get nauseous. You'll have less nausea if you have less in your belly, plus you'll have the impact will be better, and then if you do have a tendency to throw up, you're not going to throw up anything but liquid, so you don't have to worry about choking on anything, so it's way better that way. But in that area, I got to take a break, so hold on. It's 7 minutes past the hour, and this is 2 minutes of dishes and cannabis story time with Kitty Cat. Many, many years ago, there was an outlaw named Mal who traveled the land. Mal had a small, mostly trustworthy gaggle of friends that were with him in almost every adventure that came their way. What brought them to most of said adventures was their slick black van with certain parts of red that made it look eerily familiar. Mal and the gang affectionately called the van the Mosquito. That part of the story remains a mystery. Even though most of this posse were men, he liked to call them all the Pink Ladies, a reference to one of his favorite stories. The men, Heckle, Jekyll, Richie Rich, and Rudolph the Pilot, had no problem with the name. They didn't give a fuck, for the four of them were very chill and relaxed, thanks to a very special vegetable that they had come across. It was this special vegetable that helped make them and Mal the enemy of the supposed protectors of the land, who also made the laws. Jekyll was big on reading, and he was convinced that this special green stalk's powers were hidden in code in many books throughout the years. Richie Rich was right there by his side, as he himself was convinced that much of his family was involved in making this At this point, we should just call it by its name, cannabis. Anyway, Richie felt a lot of guilt and wanted to spend his life making up for his family's alleged horrific errors and his many years of not realizing he was part of the problem. But he also enjoyed getting barbecued with his friends in the Mosquito every evening. Yeah, that's enough of that. Let's see, how many characters and little things have I pulled? And that's the fun part of that, actually. It might not be the greatest story I've ever found in a mansion, but I figure it'll be fun to try to figure out all the stuff. I got to admit that describing the A-Team van, that was a little weak, but the Mosquito part, I think that's Firefly. I don't know. You figure the rest out. That's kind of a little fun. I want a little insert with these things, but I'm explaining myself too much. Oh my God, it's almost time for a panic attack. I'm all better. Where was I? Tummy issues mushrooms. So if you don't eat, then you won't have that problem. But anyway, the timing would be the less you have, the more you fasted, it'll hit more, and the potency will help as well. But sometimes it can hit around 25 minutes, but that's usually fairly early. But it's usually right around 35 to 40, and you start to feel the whoa, and it kind of feels like your brain you get the time and things are getting messed up, and that's where you can get a little squirrely and go, whoa, what's happening? Because it's a little stronger than when you've over-medicated with cannabis, and that kind of happens. And it's a little stronger because you've got a little more in your ears. And anyway, but what's really happening is your receptors are being cleaned. And you're feeling out of control because you're not usually that way. Your third eye is getting cleaned off, and it's usually all covered in shit from television and garbage food, and the fluoride in the water, and so much poison thanks to petroleum as well, and it's just so much garbage. But that's what's really happening is it's getting cleaned off. But in that area, until you get to the peak and go, oh, wow, now I understand, which is usually right around the hour 20 mark, from that 35, 40 minute to that hour 20 in that area, that's the equivalent to me to the storm in The Wizard of Oz, or the weirdness of the room in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or Alice in Wonderland, or right now I can't think of another one, but 3 is enough for now. Oz, Munchkins, Dwarves. And don't you find it funny that Mary Poppins flies with an umbrella, which suspiciously in a silhouette looks like a mushroom? And she's coming to save the children of the banks. Did P.L. Travers not know what the fuck she was doing, or what? She knew about banking. Her dad was a banker. She knew they were the killers of the world. And because she was a writer, and most of these writers, Dickens, they were trippers. If they knew about it, the deeper ones, they knew what tripping was, and the religious aspect of it and the godlike aspect of it. I'm not promoting, remember, just promoting education and trying to tie all these things together, because remember, this is where I really feel like Mikey from the Goonies, little goofball. I gotta grow the fuck up. But that little window, let's go back to the window and the storm and the rooms and all that weirdness, or it's the same thing as like a roller coaster. You spend all that time, you consume, and then you spend all that time in line, which is that 35 minutes-ish, we'll say. And then you finally get into the ride, and whoa, things are starting to get a little weird. And then you got to go up that first hill, and that's all the way to an hour 20 or so. And then hour 20 is when you hit the top of that hill and just woof, and it's oh my. But it lasts a hell of a lot longer. But I not figured those out. I'm just saying that that's what I see. I'm not saying I figured out anything, but I believe that I'm just helping to make it more obvious, because I don't hear enough people talk. I don't hear anybody really talking about this. So I gotta share. I gots to share. Son. My dad just came out a little bit there. But then when I realized when I first started to understand ego death, and I first heard the stories that some people had ego death in a spot where, and then the others were tripping out so hard, they were like, are they dead? That's what they thought, and the other people that knew what was going on, no, they're having ego death. And immediately when I first heard that, all I could think of was E.T. Everybody thought E.T. was dead. But nope. He came back to life. And they were spewing onto this mushroom thing. Because it's related to religion. I haven't even gotten into that part. I haven't said J was an M yet. And usually when I say it like that in public, somebody goes, Muslim? No, mushroom. And when you say Jesus was a mushroom, it's not a shot at people who believe in the Jesus that we're taught. It's not a shot at that. It's just actually making more sense. All the people that go, virgin birth, what the fuck? I don't still, how that, but that's a little, because most people kind of go, that's a little too much for the story there. That's getting a little mythical, too much. It's too Thor-ish. It's weird. Oh, it's 16 past the hour. That means it's time for a 1-minute Facebook scroll in the market. That's where we go. Oh, got some notifications. Who is this? Rick replied to your comment on Sky News' link. Sky News put out their thing here, a story about serial killer Charles Manson taken to hospital. He wasn't a serial killer. And then you read all the comments, and oh my gosh, it's all like they all read Helter Skelter, that book that's full of a lot of garbage. I'm not a Manson lover or anything, but the story, you can't call the guy a serial killer when he didn't kill anybody. He says he killed one person, but that's not a serial killer. Mass murderer he gets. That's crazy. But anyway, Rick, he replied, Manson, like Trump, has his hired hands do all the dirty work. Oh, it's all back to Trump. I got 3 likes, though, on my comment. Oh, that's it. Wow, shit just got real weird, huh? I didn't mean to time it that way. Come out with Jesus was a mushroom, and then, bam, a little seemingly, is that the word? Seemingly. See, I'm just as ruffled as you is. But it seemed like a little Manson love, and that's not what it was. It's just, I don't like words being, I know I do it. You've probably heard it 17 and a half minutes in. I've used some words wrong, but not in the gigantic capacity of mass murderer. When somebody who's only admitted to killing one person, and it wasn't even any of the people in that big story, the LaBianca or the Tate, those two, it was somebody from the ranch. That's just one person. I should drop a little disclaimer and really hope that anybody listening isn't driving and getting too angry. Stay safe. It's just thoughts. If you really go into it, it was Tex. Because he messed up. But anyway, if Manson gets mass murderer or serial killer label, when for ordering, if that's the case, then shouldn't anybody in office get that same label? They order death. Our government orders death every day. Wow, somebody's hungry. That's why it bothers me. It's the words are used wrong, and it's more true when it comes to our government anyway. It's a silly story, and it's sad because you got to go into it more, because you got to remember, here's one clue. Everybody goes off of Helter Skelter, but they don't dig around to see what was true and what wasn't. It was only so much of that was garbage. And who was it written by? It was written by a lawyer. So if you believe his book, and he made tons of money, and there's so much other stuff that if you look into it, you're like, wait a minute, what? What? That's what happens if you look. It's not Manson love. It's just there's more truth. There's more to it. If you're gonna go by Bugliosi's book, then you can't make any more fucking lawyer jokes. There's some sick shit, man. I mean, Bugliosi was having lunch during the trial with Linda Kasabian, the one that got immunity, who had only been around for a month, and she's the one that brought in the dirty drugs and messed up techs. If you look through that and look at that part first, you're like, wait a minute. Because they make it seem like, oh, the girl with immunity, man, it's so convoluted and stupid. But this dude didn't deserve, at least not to be in jail for all that time and stuff, for all that. It's silly. And it is silly. Other people have gotten out for actually killing a whole bunch of people and have only done a little bit of time. Dude had no money. He was easy to throw away because he'd already spent most of his life in jail anyway, but wasn't for anything that hardcore. But blah, blah, blah. This turned into Charles Manson, Jesus was a mushroom. This is a hardcore show. Woo! I wonder who's still listening. All right, let's go back to the virgin birth thing where most people, you know damn well, I know most of the people that are listening to this, when they think the virgin birth thing, even if they are a Christian, whatever, they got to go, because if they're sensible, you know, most of you are, and go, wait a minute, just poof, like Anakin Skywalker, made of midichlorians? There was kind of a poof, but that's how fungi works. Fungi, mushrooms are basically the most amazing organism on the planet. They keep the trees alive. They keep the green alive. They keep underneath that we don't even see. One of the biggest organism in Oregon. Look it up. I can't remember the name, what they call it at the moment, but they're very important. They fight cancer. There's I can't remember the guy's name, Steve, I believe. Steve, I was just watching his thing, mushrooms and how they can save the world and cancer fighting. But it goes on and on. But when it comes to religion, here's the thing with mushrooms, they're hermaphroditic. They're male and female. They don't need a seed. That's where you get the virgin birth. Jesus was born in a manger. Yeah, in cow dung. But that's okay, because that's what dung is for. It helps life. It's fertilizer. It helps bring life to life in many ways. And some mushrooms, the red and white one from Alice in Wonderland and many other things, those grow under conifer trees. So they're your presents, Christmas, but that's a whole other deal. We'll get into that some other time. Well, maybe, wait, we got time. Who knows? Maybe I'll go there, but I feel like I've gotten away from the movies and the stories. But I think I've done it in a way that makes sense. And I'm probably being a little too self-critical. I don't know. I know nothing. I'm just spitting out what I've seemingly put together that makes sense to me. I wish there was a word for that. Trash. But Jesus is, everybody, it's like he's up there, like in space or whatever. And you know what can actually, one organism on the planet that can live in space? Spores. Oh my gosh, my belly. I gotta take a break. It's 24 past the hour. It's time for my 1 minute Rogue One review, bombing around in this piece of junk. We could have had a little less Tarkin. He was cool to see, but a little less Tarkin, and some of that time could have been spent with our main characters and getting to know them a little bit more before they lost it. Some of those deaths were just so quick and like, what just happened? Did he just die? What? And the scene in the rain, guys. You guys are the brains of this operation. Can't you have this meeting out of the rain and under those awnings over there? What's that? That's retarded.
I think it's the same
hey,
as the other
I'm
car,
talking
so
here.
they're
Hey,
hitting
shut
in
up.
front of it.
Shut up. Anyway, could have had more Vader. He was cool to see, but it was a little weird. He looked weird in some spots, and James's voiceover could have been just I don't know. It just sounded a little strange. But that final scene, that whipping around, we could have had a little bit more of that, and we could have seen R2 and C-3PO somewhere around there at that end. Anyway, and that's enough of that. Paul Stamets. Look up Paul Stamets if you want to know more about how strong the mushroom is and the many strains of mushroom. And we're not even talking about the psychedelic ones. When he's talking about he's talking about not his mushrooms, but he's talking about ones that most of what I've seen, it's not even the psychedelic ones. And he did a TEDx or a TED Med in 2011, but it's Paul Stamets, Stamets. Really, really cool to listen to. Even the hat he's wearing at the TED Med is actually made from a mushroom. Crazy, man. Mycelium. And what is our internet? It's like a mycelium, like a mushroom, the basis from fungi. The core, I guess, if you could call it, if I'm getting that right, which probably not, but I think you know what I mean. Our internet. Another example would be our collective consciousness that can't be seen. And when you do psychedelics, that collective consciousness, you realize the oneness, and that's why you end up talking like Jesus when you're tripping balls. You're talking like the gods, the all-loving stuff, the oneness, you notice it. But if you're going to do the heroic dose to get to the chocolate factory or Oz or Wonderland, do your homework first. Don't anyone ever just jump right into 5 grams. Please don't do that. Do it right. Treat it sacred and it will treat you sacred. So many people will tell you, back in the day I didn't know much. Oh, do mushrooms and have a great time and drinking and blah. Didn't realize, because back in the day, we didn't have the internet, so we could look stuff up. How do you do this right? I had to go to the library, and that wasn't something a lot of people did, of course. And a lot of stuff wasn't passed down correctly. But so point being, a lot of people, including myself, go, hey, what a difference. Now I understand, because all those times you just did that little bit, which was a good prep, but you weren't treating it right. And if you treated it right, with the 6 hours don't eat, drink nothing but water. But mushrooms are, to get back to it, it's just everything. They're fleshy. That's the other part with the Jesus thing. I know I'm all over the place right now, but there's just so much. It's insane. Oh, I was talking about the collective consciousness, and I was back to the Jesus part, but eat of my flesh, eat of my body, the manna. But a lot of this stuff to begin with for me, I didn't really get into it until I said the same thing that most people say to me, which is, get the fuck out of here. I said the same thing when I first heard this, first couple times. My buddy Jeff Clark, who passed away November 1st. And Jeff, But when he said, I think it was the third time that he was talking to me about this stuff in my studio, and I went, wait a minute, what'd you just say? He said the Dead Sea Scrolls. John Marco Allegro was one of the people that was hired to transcribe the Dead Sea Scrolls, and he was like, look, it's a mushroom cult. It's taken from the Siberian people and this and that and Jesus. And then you start looking at then you go to looking at the Vatican. Google Pope mushroom clothing. Google Vatican fountains. Google Vatican pine cone statue. Why is there a pine cone statue in Vatican City? Pine cone represents the pineal gland in your brain, your third eye. How do you clean off the third eye? With the mushrooms. That's why there's 2 big mushroom fountains. All the doorways. And then the Pope. He looks like a mushroom, whatever he's wearing. Whether it's the red thing, sometimes it's gold, because sometimes those... Oh, man, we've made it through another 30. Holy cow. Well, I guess I'll just jump right back in or leave it hanging. I don't know. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you, Jared. It's been fun. Can't believe I've knocked another one out. It's crazy. Time really does fly. Daddy loves you.